Welcome, everybody, to episode 91 of the Racing Line podcast. You joined tonight by myself and Joseph. We will be reviewing the recent Singapore Grand Prix. Joey, how are you, buddy?
Hey mate, how you doing, dude? I'm very
Good,
well.
good. Mate, after that race, it can't be anything but good.
Mate, there was a interesting start to that race where I thought, what's going to happen?
Mm,
But Singapore never fails to deliver. And I think for a lot of fans out there who wanted to see something different, this was the race to highlight a really good race for the win, and also bring the Red Bull dominance to a very abrupt end.
mm,
With the fact that they didn't score higher than fifth. Like that, I think that was a real big surprise. But from my end, other than the fact that Albon got shafted on the last lap, it wasn't a bad race. I loved it.
mhm. Well, if you haven't watched it or, been living under a rock and haven't seen the results, Carlos Sainz got his second win in a Ferrari, his second win in
Yeah.
Formula One. Lando Norris was P2 and Lewis Hamilton P3, bringing an end, like Joey said, to the Red Bull dominance of 2023, which was nice because they weren't in the fight at all. But I think I wanted to start with Ferrari, Joe, and their recent upturn in performance. Um, Carlos was absolutely on fire this weekend. He was in Monza as well, getting the pole position. Um, I think as things stand, Carlos is the informed driver and the better of the two.
100%. I think we touched on it in um at Monza, where we sort of said, when I think we discussed who the number one driver was going forward, and I think we said there shouldn't be a number one driver. But 100%, when by the time qualify, I think it was he got a fastest in practice one.
Mhm.
And I thought, oh, he might be on for sort of a high scoring weekend like Monza. Um, but I never expected, as I suppose no one did,
Mm.
him to go on and win the race. But very early on, it was evident that the Red Bulls um, weren't comfortable at Singapore, which, as odd as it might sound, is probably more understandable than not like we've seen Mercedes go to Singapore before and in their years of dominance, and Red Bull still was the car to have at Singapore. And I think the roles were a bit reversed on them. Whatever they've done
Mm.
in building that car, the car just didn't suit that Singapore track as as much as other circuits. It is a very specific track. I know a lot of people are saying this is what happens when they make those flexi front wings rigid. And Horner was very quick to say, yeah, we probably lose about 1/10 of a second a
Mm.
lap with the front wings. And I don't think it's a cause for major concern for Red Bull
Yeah.
either, to be honest.
No, neither
Um,
do I.
but it was good to see, some fresh blood on the podium, and have no Red Bull on the podium, which was awesome. Three
Hmm.
different teams headed up by Carlos Sainz, who, like you said, probably even an even better performance in his win at Silverstone. Just the way that he really commanded that whole race, like from the start, he controlled the pace, which probably made the start quite boring. And then the way that he ended the race and strategically let Norris into his DRS to then give him the power to fight both Mercedes, I thought was so ballsy.
Big
Um,
brain, big brain.
he so like they're the kind of moves that, when I think about it, I don't think they're the calls that Leclerc would make. But Science is always sort of like playing 3D chess when he's racing. Like his brain is always thinking more than just about what he's doing, but about strategy, about pit call, about risking tire moves. Where he's very proactive with that. And then when the over the radio, his race strategist said, you have to watch that gap to Norris. He's like, that's just part of the plan.
Mm.
I thought that was, such high level thinking.
I've said it before, and I think this weekend definitely proved it. When Carlos is at one with the car, he's kind of like Danny Rick, I think, where he needs to feel comfortable in that car. And when he is, he's one of the best on the grid. When he's not, he doesn't get the results. Whereas Charles, he kind of, the car has to be perfect for Charles to perform. But I think Charles's ceiling is higher because he can push that little bit more and he gets those epic results. But he can't get performance out of something um, when it's not at the optimum.
Yeah, yeah. His ceiling is probably higher. His floor is definitely
Mm,
um, lower because he just, well, we've seen it so much when the car is not, able to push to the level he wants. A lot of the time, he does crash it, which he
mm,
didn't this week. He came home with a fourth as well. But yeah, Carlos, what a drive! It was great to see Zach Brown sort of congratulating him after the race as well, acknowledging the sort of shared history they have. And really, like for Ferrari fans, podium at Monza, probably the best you could expect at Monza,
mm.
with the way with how the car is suited there. But then to come to back that up with now a win in Singapore, fantastic result. I don't know how that's going to correlate to Suzuka coming up, but for Ferrari to be the team that snatches the first win of the other teams, I think is massive for them. Um,
Well,
regardless of if they finish second or third in the championship, I think if they're the only team that snags a
mm,
win this year, that's a massive morale boost to the team, to their fans, but also just we were very critical of them a couple of races ago, and I'm not going to say anything that it's like that they're not going to do what Ferrari does best. But are they turning a corner? I really hope so. I think there is enough races now to finish the season strong and take that momentum into the off season and be ready to lay down a good charge next year. And I think this is a good time of the year when there's no real pressure on them. They're going
mm.
to be at worst third in the championship, probably second, and just put in some consistent results. Build that rapport with the strategists, the drivers, clean pit stops, momentum. Hit that off season, and do your homework to build a faster car to upgrade your car for next year.
Yeah, I just think we've seen the midfield, and we'll talk midfield. We'll include Ferrari and Mercedes in that. In quali, everyone's getting closer to Red Bull, but this was the first race where we saw race pace was even across the field. I read a quote this morning from Christian saying that the flexi wing change in directive, like you said, has a tenth. He said the quote I read said there was zero effect. They've changed no parts on their car. But I'm hoping now we're seeing Ferrari, McLaren, Mercedes, half of Aston Martin getting closer. So we're
We'll
seeing
get
these type of, yeah, I know the
we'll get to
strolling ball,
that. Yeah.
strolling ball is back, but I'm hoping we see these teams now
Well, this
starting to their race pace is getting closer to Red Bull.
by rights, this is the time of the year where Red Bull's penalties should start compounding the
Mm,
most. With the lack of wind tunnel testing, the and the salary cap sort of deficit, um, and also realistically, Red Bull know that there is no way they're losing this championship
mm,
or either championship, and they don't need to bring upgrades every race to catch. They could very much start devoting a lot of that time and resource into next year's iteration. Which is probably a bad thing for next year, but they haven't got that pressure on them like we've seen other teams have to carry to the end of the year, continually
mm,
keep upgrading. What I found really interesting about Red Bull, we'll probably go transition to them this race, this was the first race, and yes, they started on an alternate tire strategy, but this was the first race where really they weren't able to race through the field with the ease that we've seen
mm,
throughout the whole year. And then even after the safety cars fell, the safety cars probably didn't help them in any way. But after the virtual safety car at the end, they did put on a new set. They had put on a new set of tires, um, Max was able to make more positions, which is expected, but um, Checo really struggled to get past those, midfield cars, and really only scored points from a ridiculous move on Albon that we'll probably touch later.
A
I
couple of
hope that this is.
DNFs.
I hope that this is a trend that, and a couple of DNFs. I hope that this is a trend that continues though, um, in relation to the fact that, like you said, the midfield battle has been, like we've said it all year, it's going to be very interesting, but it has
Mm.
just tightened up even more. Um, the fact that Williams was running at a pace to score points at a track that they consider their worst, track for their car. Uh, Haas got some points. Ocon was looking really strong towards that middle part of the race towards the end until his Renault engine does what it does best and
Mm.
failed. Um, Mercedes and Ferrari were having a great race with McLaren. There was I think every team. Oh, our Kiwi friend Liam Lawson scored his first Formula One points. I think every team leaves this weekend with some hope, not hope, but a bit of optimism. Maybe not Aston Martin, but there wouldn't be many other teams that can't take something from this weekend and to build from when you think about it.
Well, the AlphaTauri apparently had 9 upgrades, um,
Yeah,
which
and
is huge. And they seem to work. Like they both look pretty quick, even though Yuki didn't get a race again, second race in a row. Um,
Yuki's going to lose his seat from not being able to start races that aren't his fault.
yeah. Did you want to talk about AlphaTauri?
I want to talk about Liam Lawson. I thought, like, once again, we've said, I think every race he's been in, he did his job, but every
Mm,
race doing his job, he's setting a higher expectation. First was, he finished ahead of his teammate, which was fortuitous, but finished the race, kept it clean. Then it was
mm,
qualified better than his teammate and finished ahead of his teammate. Now, once again, he's finishing ahead of his teammate, which won't be the story because the story is he scored an eighth place, which is what, eighth or ninth place. He got 2 points. Did he come eighth or ninth? He came eighth.
you should have got 4 points if you came
Should have got
eighth.
4 points. So he's got more points than any AlphaTauri driver this year.
I
Um,
I I think it's hard to compare throughout the season because that they did have so many upgrades and we did have multiple DNFs, but he hasn't put a foot wrong, and I think he's giving AlphaTauri a huge headache at the moment.
I
Um,
don't, I don't think for them it's going to be a headache. I think it's going to be very cut and dry.
so I saw a couple of rumors today actually that
Yeah.
Yuki's about to be announced for next year.
Oh, is he?
Um, and then apparently Daniel a couple of weeks later. But I don't know. I don't know if it's hope on my part, but I still think that Daniel will be in the main seat because now they've got this dilemma where they've got four Red Bull drivers in their stable. Checo's not one of them.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you promote Liam Lawson, who's clearly got something? He's proven it over 3 races, whereas Nick De Vries got the seat after one race.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you then they can say all our drivers are Red Bull drivers.
I, yeah, I think this is a very different situation to the Nick De Vries situation. When the Nick De Vries situation, there wasn't as many drivers at their disposal.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, I just mean like Checo's not performing. They've got Daniel Ricciardo, they've got Liam Lawson performing, and they've got Yuki who's solid.
yeah,
I don't
Yuki is
know.
definitely so. I think um, the 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 pressure on Checo is definitely ratcheting up,
Mm,
and I think it's, if anything, is coming to a stage where they're trying to put as much pressure on him to make him crack.
mm,
Um, are they going to uh, sort of carry? I mean, the other option is that Danny Rick just stays as reserve driver next year in with the team knowing that inevitably they're going to get rid of Sergio sometime mid-year.
mm.
Um, and it sort of goes like that. like I said, I don't think Yuki has shown anything in the last 3 years that I think um he's definitely gotten better from when he started, but he's never had any wow moments. The thing as well for him is that there are so many of these problems that aren't his fault. I
Mm.
wouldn't feel comfortable if he was to lose his job because of that. Just confirming, Yuki has scored 3 points. Liam Lawson's must have come ninth because he only scored two. But um, yeah, if they're going to
I
sign
just
Yuki, I'm happy with that as a result for him. I can't see them not signing Liam Lawson because if the longer this goes and the more he stacks up for himself, I see another team swooping in and picking him up instead,
I
and they're
think
not
the
going to
same
run
could
that gauntlet.
I think the same could be said for Daniel though, because I think his stocks are pretty high again, even after the McLaren debacle. Not that he's going to leave, but there's got to be
No,
some assurances there that he will be in the top seat at some point.
it's going to
So,
be a very high pressure end of the season
mm.
for Sergio.
And
It's going to be borderline unbearable with the amount of questions that are going to be asked to him. Christian Helmet has no problem speaking his mind. We found out in the last couple of weeks,
but
with some ridiculous comments, but regardless, like it's going to be a very interesting tightrope to
realistically, just to finish this part off,
yeah
they put Checo in that car after the last race of the season, after 2019 or 2020, whenever it was.
yeah
Who's to say they don't sign Daniel for AlphaTauri and then make the change at the end of the year, put Liam in that car? It
in which
if
car
like if they say Checo's staying next year, Daniel's
yeah
going to AlphaTauri,
yeah
Checo fails to perform, they just make the cut at the end of the year. Daniel moves up, Liam comes into AlphaTauri. I think Liam now is being earmarked to take that seat after Daniel.
100%. I think there's
The top seat, I mean, the Red Bull, not AlphaTauri.
100%. I just don't think they're going to push him in there. Like I
Mm-mm.
can't see them. They're going to give him some time,
Mm-hmm.
but I think we've seen like when we watch him race, great head on his shoulders, races really well. Only driver this year to actually pass Max Verstappen on track. That's a pretty wanky stat, but it's a stat nonetheless. Reminds me the way he drives reminds me very much of Oscar in the way that
Mm-hmm.
they're both quite young, but they drive with like a lot of poise. They don't make rash mistakes. They're not crashing the car. We saw Strolling Ball have a moment in qualifying. He hasn't had any of those moments. Um, and that's got to be one of the harder tracks to go to. There's not much room for error there other than Monaco. That track is
Mm.
tight. To come away with some decent points. Once again, he's doing everything he's been asked to do and then some.
And it's annoying that we're having this conversation about Liam, Daniel,
This is going to be a
Chair.
conversation that's going to push till the off season.
But yeah, but what I'm trying to get, like, we got Teo Chair on the sidelines too. We got Dragovic, and then we have this pay driver who continuously crashes the car, who has been severely outperformed by his teammate this year to the point where the team's going to come fourth after the year they had because of they've been fighting with one. Like, how is he in the sport guaranteed when we've got all these drivers that aren't? It's
Well,
frustrating.
I think the problem or the problem you've highlighted right now is something that I've harped on a lot about, and it is Formula One has a major problem. I think it's a major problem with hanging on to drivers too long.
Mm.
Um, and it's not just hanging on to drivers, but it's what is the driver doing for you? Can a rookie do it for you? Is what the driver doing for you able to be replicated by someone who's cheaper, younger, and has a better future for the sport? Teo Porcher, say what you will, I think he's a great F2 driver. Um, is he going to do for you what Bottas or what Joey's doing? So Joey, I think, has been signed for next year now. I think we're waiting for a
Mm-hmm.
contract extension. Fair enough. But I don't. Is Bottas would be on contract for next year as well.
Yes.
Um, we're now wasting years from these drivers. Dragovic is the same, and I
Mm-hmm.
love Alonso. I don't. I defend Stroll. What Alonso is doing for that team this year is something that I don't think another driver could do for that team.
No, I
Um,
agree.
Having said that, I would be interested. We can't measure it really well against a teammate because the teammate he has is so far inferior to him. Um, and yeah,
I,
I
yeah.
think the risk they're running is that they're going to have, say this goes on for another year, um, you might not be getting the best out of these young drivers because they're on, they're on the sidelines too long, and then another batch of young drivers comes in and is fighting for the same seats. It is ruthless, but I would much rather see the younger drivers, um, especially when they're from these academies,
Mm.
brought in at the earliest opportunity.
I don't mind the older drivers as long as they're performing. Like you said, Alonso, Hamilton, um, Vettel was at the end. Like you could tell towards the last few years, like he needed to go, and that was one that needed to go.
Yeah,
I don't mind the older drivers as long as they're performing. Now, when
but
you've
like
got someone in there,
say like a
yeah,
driver like Bottas,
he's not doing much.
he's not doing much at all. He's probably been one of the bigger disappointments this year, really, because there are races where he just disappears. Like you don't even hear of him.
Mm. The car's crap, but Zhou has been more of a standout this year, 100%. And I don't
He's
know
the
if it's reflected in the points, but yeah.
well, they haven't got many, so
Mm. Like
I'm not
Kevin
sure.
Magnussen, Kevin Magnussen, someone else could do that job.
I think both of the Haas drivers are. I think the reason they're both there is because that car is so bad that anyone could drive it that badly. I mean,
Mm.
Kevin did get some points this week, so kudos to him. But like I think that was quite fortuitous.
Mm-hmm.
Now I've lost the point that I was trying to make. I had a good point lined up, and now you've if the decision came down, like if the decision that was going to be made was we like it's Liam Lawson or Danny Rick that they're choosing to, if the decision is between those two, I know you would prefer Danny Rick to be in there, but for the sake of bringing in a fresh talent, would you be happy with the decision to push Danny Rick back to the sidelines to bring in Liam Lawson from what we've seen from him?
It's hard. Like, yeah,
And
like Liam's do
this is not from like don't want to think about like the commercial aspect of Danny Rick is very
mm,
strong. The way that the public perceives him and the the character he is, taking that aside, and it's just the the what you get on track. Would you be happy with that decision if they were to make it?
like I wouldn't be purely just because I feel like Daniel's got something to prove, and I don't think we haven't seen him. Like we saw him in two races, and the car was
Yeah,
crap still. It's now
yeah.
upgraded. Look, if he comes in and he, give him another couple to get his hand right, and he doesn't perform as well as Liam, hands up, fair enough. Put Liam in the seat. But we don't know what he can do in that car at the moment. And he's only 33. Like he's not 40. So
Uh, I'm not saying that in respect to if that he's
mm,
washed up. I'm just saying if the give and take to bringing Liam in was relegating Danny Rick to the sidelines in the hope with the only opportunity being that Sergio is going to get benched
mm,
sometime in the season. I personally, I think I would be happy with that just to see, because at the same time, if Liam is a flash in the pan and he's not performing, you can put Danny Rick back in.
yeah,
But
that's
I don't want to see drivers, when they come in with a bit of confidence and a bit of form, for them to
mm,
lose that, and then we're not going to see him back for another year and a half. And by that time, maybe the
mm.
form and the confidence just isn't there really at that level that he needed anymore.
I definitely think they've got a bit of a headache on their hands, but it'll
It's
be
a better headache
interesting.
to have than having no drivers, which is what we were talking about a couple of like not too long ago.
Yeah, that's right. 100%.
What do
Did
you
you want
think
to?
of Mercedes this week? Because I thought up until George putting it in the wall on the last lap, great strategy call.
Mm,
I think the only thing I probably would have encouraged would have been for George to let Hamilton pass him, with the caveat that if he didn't make any moves for them to reverse it
mm,
on the last lap, I think that would have been somewhat wise.
mm,
Having said that, there wasn't that many laps. Once they got to the pack, there wasn't
mm.
actually that many laps for both of them really to have a go.
Do
Um,
you really think Lewis would have given that back though? I don't. The way he wanted to pass George on track. You could tell he wanted
he
to pass
did.
him.
I think realistically they could both see the win. Like it was four within 2 seconds or something like that. Like they were
Mm,
nearly line to stern.
it was
Um,
amazing.
it was a great end to the race, and we probably should have started with this, but let's dwell on it. I haven't seen an end like that, and it wasn't just the fact that it was the end; it was the fact that it was the end like that, and the previous stoppage was at least 20 laps before that. Still, so
Mm,
there was a very there was a virtual safety car. I think I'll say this now. I think Williams were the first team to jump on changing the tires. So happy to see that them, pull a early move rather than being late to the party like they have been the last couple of races. Really happy with that, and then also Mercedes. I expect it from them as well. But once again, virtual safety car comes out. Thank you, Ocon. Unfortunately for you, but it spiced up the end of the race. From that moment on, we're counting down, seconds of how long they've got to catch up, how long to go. Norris sort of caught the back of Carlos at the right time as well. So when they all met together for those last 5 laps, or 4 or 5 laps, it felt organic because it was organic.
mm,
There was 3 cars there, or 3 different types of car, and it was just awesome. Under the lights at Singapore, street track. Well, Jeopardy. If you made a mistake, we saw that in that moment. I just thought the race started off tentative, opened up in the
mm.
middle, and then exploded at the end.
Kind of felt like the end to an IndyCar race.
Yeah, but without all the cautions,
Yeah,
without
like
the
it was just
ridiculous number
all
of cautions.
so many cars close together. Like I
Yeah,
loved it.
yeah,
I Mercedes, I think it's so track dependent with them at the moment. Like you can't pick it. Like we could go
yeah,
to Suzuka this weekend and they'll just be nowhere again.
yeah.
Um, I'm hoping they're fixing that for next year because I want to see as many teams up the front as possible. But mate, I think Lewis showed why they're still invested in him.
Yeah, yep.
I think George is a really good driver. I think he still has a bit to learn. I think the pressure of having someone like Lewis behind him got to him a bit. I don't know what your thoughts are on the crash, but I think it may have been he was feeling a bit of pressure from the team, from Lewis.
I don't know if it was pressure per se. Like I definitely think there was pressure involved in the situation.
Mm,
I just think as well there was so many other things going on. There was the fact that
mm,
you can visually see the win, how far you have to get ahead to get the win. There was no Red Bulls in front of him, so the hardest part of getting a win from this year, and a great opportunity to get the win this year. I think all those drivers felt that desperation. It wasn't just Carl. I don't think it was just Carlos. I think they all felt an opportunity to snag, sort
mm,
of not a gimme, but for all those drivers, it was somewhat of a gimme that Max wasn't 30 seconds up the road. Um, Realistically, it was all the things that we have been building for the last couple of years. Norris, we've seen Norris grow at Mercedes. We've seen George come in at, sorry, Norris grow at McLaren. George is
mm-hmm,
the, young up and comer at Mercedes. Carlos got brought in to do a job at Ferrari. Um, they're the sort of stories that have been in the background to Red Bull, and sort of dominating the last couple of years, and the championship before with Max versus Lewis. Um, it was awesome to see those other guys, have a moment. I think a really great moment to showcase their talent. Also, I imagine that those bits of footage captured are going to be used on
Mm.
advertisement for the next year or year to come. That's you can't make that up. And at the same time, I think for George it was a bit of pressure, desperation. Like he doesn't know what happened. I think it could just also be just
Exhaustion.
slightly outbreaking yourself slightly, but it's a game of millimeters in Formula
Mm.
One. And it might be the case that if he pulled off what he was trying to do, he would have been the hero. Realistically, he's losing some points, but he's not losing that much. I think we all saw the talent that well, the strategy call, and then the driver's ability to race back up through the pack was
Mm.
fantastic. That was probably the best part of the race. Watching those Mercedes hunt down the leaders.
Yeah, 100%. I just think I'm hoping this weekend that we're seeing something similar, but I don't know if Red Bull are going to be back on top this weekend, but we'll soon find out.
It's going to be very interesting because the aero dependence at Suzuka, especially going through the Lesmos, is so high that you can see like there isn't any sweeping corners at Singapore. It's a very
Mm.
interesting track. Aero at Suzuka is massive. Like
Mm.
it is all somewhat fast corners. So many sweeping
S's.
corners. There's S's. There's long rounded corners. There isn't many turn and shoot. I don't think there's any turn and shoot corners except maybe the hairpin.
The last chicane, maybe just before the.
Yeah, but that's such a bus stop chicane. Yeah,
Mm.
I think you'd gain so much more time through the S's and through the Lesmos than
Mm.
through there anyway. Yeah, so I think the aero, like it's going to be very interesting going there because that Red Bull is so aero efficient. Um, we might we might go back to Red Bull, a comfortable Red Bull 1-2, depending on if anyone's bringing any more upgrades or what they can maximize. But having said that, what we've seen the last couple of races is that the tracks that we think we're going to see cars perform badly at, we're seeing them perform well. Cars that we think are going to perform well at tracks aren't, performing as well. So hopefully that trend continues
Mm.
because one thing is for sure, you can, up until this week, you can call the winner, but how the midfield shakes out is, it's just like getting a couple of dice and rolling them and, seeing what numbers turn up. It's never the same. It's never the same at all.
I'm hoping we see Williams again, up the back of that mid pack, challenging
Mate,
for points.
they should have scored they should have scored points this weekend. I am so furious with the penalty that Perez got.
Five
I thought was
seconds.
such a bullshit penalty. When you watch
Mm.
the footage back and you see what happened, you're like, how can you only be penalized 5 seconds for like stuffing it up the inside so far? Like it wasn't even on. Like
I think
I
that
didn't want.
I think that shows the pressure he's under too. But he tried to make an all or
Yeah,
nothing move.
100%. But at the same time, my thing is with the FIA, it's if okay, so you're giving a penalty, so you're acknowledging that he's at fault.
Mm.
Usually, when you're giving penalties for ruining someone's race, if they finish, the penalty is usually given so that they finish behind that person. A 5 second penalty is nothing.
No,
Um,
no, not
like
no,
especially
not at
when he's
all.
stranded there for 30 seconds because the track is so tight. I was quite furious because I can understand he might be flabbergasted that he's stuck
Mm.
behind a Williams again, but
Qualify better.
That's not Williams' fault. Qualify better. Exactly. Exactly.
Stop being
I
shit.
thought Albon put a great race together, especially considering that I think he started 15th, which wasn't great.
Mm.
But to be on track to be finishing 8th, or 9th maybe, I would say he definitely had the pace to catch Lawson with the better tires as well. Um,
Can I
so
can I
eighth
say
was on the cards.
Williams need to keep him because he is
Oh,
outstanding.
100%. But also, I think they're proving to him
Mm,
that they can provide a car for him to get results. I think once that, I think we're getting to a stage now where he has proved himself. We
mm,
know that he has got what it takes. And at the same time, the team is proving that they have what it takes to bring him results to get that car further up the grid. The thing is, what if the production side of that, developing that car stops, I wouldn't even feel bad if he left. It's a very mutual
mm,
relationship. They've given him a lifeline. He is now delivering so much more than what they could have expected. Um, they if they, I think both parties share the same aspirations. Um, and as long as they can both grow together, I think that's
mm-hmm,
a really good match where, like we're saying, uh, each team sort of has their standout driver. Lando at Mercedes, George now is going to fill in at McLaren.
mm-hmm.
Ferrari has there too. Um, I think Albon really can be that driver for Williams. Uh, like I don't think any of us expected the consistency he's showing this year, and this is not like a word of a lie. Yeah, he crashed at Albert Park, um, but the consistency he's showing this year. I think if you were to sort of have a look at it in retrospect, would probably be the most consistent any driver has been this year, other than Max.
Mm.
Like he's consistently maximizing, especially in the last 8, 9 races. He's either finishing 11th, 10th, ninth, or 8th. And then yesterday he finished 11th again, and that should have been another 8. Like he's since Montreal, he's on an awesome purple patch for like
Yeah,
where that car should be.
I think Williams are in a similar boat to Aston, where one driver is just severely outperforming the other. But Logan is a rookie. Got to give him a bit
Yeah,
of
the
leeway, I
difference is
guess.
Logan is a rookie, and
Yeah,
uh, Lance is a 6 season veteran at this stage. It's got to be.
yeah, it'll
So
be close.
like there's a massive, and also the gap between Albon and Sargent isn't as big as between
Mm,
Alonso and Stroll, but there is I think there is a with the aspirations that the team has. I think pressure now is going to be mounting on. I said Logan's job this year was to learn and finish races, which he's doing for the most part. I think if a step isn't made next year early on, or even maybe towards the end of this year, as a
mm.
team, they might be reevaluating what their aspirations are for next year,
It'll
because
be.
where
Mm,
that team is gonna finish the season, they're gonna need 2 drivers to be scoring points to take that next step.
it'll be very interesting to see what direction they take. I don't know who they'd put in if they did get rid of Logan, but he needs to pick up his game, I think.
Here's an interesting quandary. Maybe before we finish, Red Bull has got a lot of drivers and not enough seats,
Lone
right?
Liam.
Do they loan anyone? Like, say they want to put Liam in a seat in AlphaTauri. I'm pretty sure that even a driver like Danny Rick, with the performance that car is showing now, if he's going to get an AlphaTauri seat, he might even prefer a Williams seat on loan. And as the team, that also might be a bonus for them, because they're going to be getting a better driver in that second seat, someone who we know is able to match Albon's potential.
I thought this a few weeks ago, and I don't know if I said it on the pod, but it wouldn't surprise me if Checo ends up there. Red Bull, if Red
Oh,
Bull cut him, it wouldn't surprise me if he ends up there.
100%, because he'll bring his Mexican money as well.
Mm-hmm.
I actually wouldn't mind Checo being there, to be honest. I
I
think
think
Checo I think Checo's best moments have been at
midfield.
smaller teams, no pressure. And when there's no pressure, he brings out a magical moment every year that we go, that's why he's here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I definitely think he's showing more than. Yeah, I would be very happy if someone of Checo's caliber was to come to the team. But having said that, I see Checo and Danny Rick very as drivers very close together as well. Probably like they're both at the same age. They've both been around the block. Um,
I think Danny
Danny Rick's
Rick's a way
probably.
better driver.
I think Danny Rick's more consistent, but I don't know how much that's gonna. Oh, what that would be worth at Williams.
Mm. It'd be
It's gonna
interesting,
it's
interesting
gonna be
times.
it's gonna be a very interesting end to the year. But yeah,
And
if Checo wants to bring that Mexican money to Williams, I'm all for it, baby. Let's go.
and hopefully our boy Oscar can start getting some results like Lando's getting, which would be good.
Yeah. Well, where did he end up coming this week? Seventh. I thought he had a pretty good
Yeah,
recovery drive this week,
yeah,
but
10 positions.
yeah, I thought that was pretty impressive. But yeah, I think he needs that. I think by the end of this year, he's gonna want, that, or a podium. I think a podium. If he doesn't have a podium by the end of this year, where we'd be disappointed.
Mm.
But just a result that we go, you know what, he came, he put together the perfect weekend, and he showed up and showed out. I think by the end of the year, he'll want that for himself. I think he'll want that for himself very much so. Here's
Brazil
Brazil. He's probably never raced there though.
doesn't matter. He's never raced to Singapore either.
Yeah, and he didn't beat Lando.
Yeah, but he got it's Stroll's fault. He would have made Q2 but he wasn't Stroll.
Yeah,
So
I know. Strolling ball through a curveball at the end of that qualifying, man.
it's
And
it's always the
I did.
Aussies that get screwed by that strolling ball too.
It's you know what? It's not the Aussies. It's the guys who can't do a good first lap. That banker has to be a decent banker. We've seen it so many times that you can get screwed so easily if your banker is, if you don't put it
Mm.
together and you're somewhat a decent lap together on your banker. So as much as I feel sorry for them when it happens, it it happens too often for you to be
Mm.
banking, that in those last seconds you're gonna the lap times are always getting faster. So your first lap still has to be fast. But you say Brazil, what races are left that he's raced at? We're not going back to. Do we have any more European rounds now?
No more European.
What's left? Maybe Vegas where no one's been.
Qatar.
Maybe Vegas.
Got Qatar. We got Mexico, Brazil, Abu Dhabi. Hmm.
I'm gonna say Vegas. I'm gonna say
He's raced.
Vegas.
He's raced at Abu Dhabi. Surely he's done some testing there at
Yeah, he
least.
would definitely. He's probably done an F2 race at Abu Dhabi.
Yeah. So maybe there.
I'm just gonna say Vegas. That's my one.
Vegas. All right.
Podium
Well, I
on the
think we'll leave it
strip.
there.
No worries.
Wouldn't that be good?
That'd be an awesome title. Podium on the strip. Or podium in the
Podium.
Devil's Playground.
I think we'll leave it there. Excellent.
Some
Well,
kind of confession.
yeah, 50 Hail Marys. Thanks for jumping on, mate. Guys, listeners, thank you for listening. Keep liking, subscribing, all that sort of stuff. Interacting with the pod has been great. Spread the word. Tell your friends. If they've watched Drive to Survive, tell them to listen to this podcast. But Joey, thanks for jumping on. And I'll see you in a week's time to review Suzuka.